Hello, and welcome to another vlog. I recently turned to Reddit to ask the disabled community for help identifying some common disability stereotypes, and I was very happy with the response that I got, and I'd like to talk a little bit about what I've learned, specifically what those myths are and why they're harmful to people with disabilities. So let's get started. Myth number 1. All disabilities are visible. There is a common misconception among the able-bodied community that disabilities are physical limitations that can be seen. So, for example, a mobility impairment. But like we've talked about on this series many times in the past, there are many disabilities that cannot be seen, such as mental illnesses and chronic pain. But just because a disability is not visible doesn't mean that it's any less real than a disability that is visible. And this stereotype can be very harmful because it creates a negative stigma around invisible disabilities, which I'll talk about a bit more later. Myth number 2. Invisible disabilities are fake or imaginary. There are some people who believe that people with invisible disabilities are either faking or imagining their symptoms. They might think that someone with an invisible disability is making up their symptoms to get sympathy or attention, or they may just think that that individual thinks that they're in pain even though they're not. But this just isn't the case. Invisible disabilities are just as real and can be just as serious as visible disabilities, even if you can't see them. Just because you can't see someone's pain doesn't mean that that pain doesn't exist. And again, this is a very harmful stereotype, for the same reason as the previous stereotype, in that it creates a negative stigma around invisible disabilities. Specifically, it delegitimizes them and makes them seem less real and less serious than they really are, which is especially harmful to individuals who live with these very real health conditions on a day-to-day basis, because it just adds to the struggles that they have to deal with. So this is another stereotype that I think needs to stop sooner rather than later. Myth number 3. People with physical disabilities also have intellectual disabilities. There's another common stereotype that someone with a physical disability also has an intellectual or a learning disability. Now, I myself have never actually been called mentally challenged, but I have been called clever. All joking aside, though, this is a very harmful stereotype, and it's just very inaccurate as well. Although there are some individuals with physical disabilities who also have intellectual or learning disabilities, physical disabilities don't typically affect someone's intellectual ability. And even if they did, that doesn't excuse talking down to or mistreating someone because of that. The main reason why this stereotype is so harmful is because it puts an emphasis on what people with disabilities can't do as opposed to what they can do. And it just kind of adds to the belief, the very inaccurate belief, that people with disabilities are less capable than able-bodied individuals. Because, like I've mentioned many times in previous videos, people with disabilities, myself included, are just as capable as able-bodied individuals. We just have a different way of doing things. So I really think the conversation needs to switch from what people with disabilities can't do to what we can do. And if you're an able-bodied person who already does that, then kudos to you. But if you're someone who isn't quite gotten there yet, hopefully this video will help you get to that point. Myth number 4. People with disabilities want special treatment. Now, this is probably the most infuriating myth on this list, at least for me. This myth suggests that people with disabilities use their disabilities as an excuse to get special privileges or free things. But speaking from experience, this just isn't true. It is true that there are some programs and services in place to help people with disabilities, depending on which jurisdiction you live in. But these programs and services tend to be few and far between, and their main purpose isn't to give people with disabilities special privileges, but rather to level the playing field, to make it easier for them to work, live on their own, and contribute to society. Able-bodied individuals don't usually need these kinds of services because they don't usually need help living independently. But a lot of people with disabilities do. Of course, not everyone with a disability does, but a lot of individuals do, myself included. Now, unless there's some hidden conspiracy I don't know about, I don't know of any people with disabilities who get special privileges simply because they have a disability. I don't know of anyone who gets free money from the government just for shits and giggles because they have a disability. Because this just isn't something that happens. I myself do receive some government assistance to fund things such as attendant care, because for me this is a necessity. I do need 24-hour care, but for someone like myself who has limited to no income, that's not something that I can afford out of pocket, and that's where the government comes in. But these services can come at a cost. The funding that I do receive barely covers my specific needs. It's not quite enough to cover the 24-hour care that I need, which is one of the reasons why I live with my parents. And I've had to fight long and hard to get it. A lot of the funding that I receive is the result of a lot of self-advocacy over the course of many years. So this misconception that people with disabilities get special treatment is not only very inaccurate, it's also very harmful, because it basically victimizes people with disabilities simply for asking for help. Anyway, that's just a quick overview of some of the more common misconceptions about disabilities. I want to thank everyone on Reddit who replied to my post and helped me to research this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to see more videos like this, by all means, support us on Patreon. Other than that, thanks for watching and see you next week.